Now, government, we're hearing, could slam the brakes on its nuclear program. The Energy Department releasing a new proposal today. The plan suggesting South Africa will wait 2 decades before another reactor comes online. Live to Cape Town, response now from Ompi Apane, who speaks for the department. DDG, good evening to you and welcome. So, delayed plans to build new nuclear power plants. Is this purely a cost decision as far as government is concerned?
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me. Let me start by saying that actually government has just indicated what the base case in relation to the integrated resource plan might look like. We're calling for public consultation. We're soliciting inputs in relation to the assumptions that we have made, in relation to the scenarios that we'd like to see modeled, and we'd also like to see as to whether there might be some issues that the public feel that we need to consider in our consideration of the integrated resource plan. So it is contingent on those inputs and assumptions that we have made in relation to the base case as to whether this does indeed pan out to mean that we need to postpone some of the decisions that we have made and so forth.
So, in other words, a firm decision has not been taken. We're hearing that the first nuclear power station could come on stream now in 2037. You're suggesting to me tonight that no firm decision has yet been made, that this is still open for discussion. Am I hearing you correctly?
That's correct. We're saying that this is only the beginning of the process of developing the integrated resource plan. We are now at milestone number 2, if I can just perhaps outline what this means. So we start by making certain assumptions, which is what we have done. We run some scenarios. We end up with what we call a credible base case. And then after that, we go through a process of public consultation before we arrive, at the final policy adjusted resource plan. So this is like, step 2 out of 4. It might be a little bit misleading to already indicate that this is the final plan.
Having said that, though, Eskom, Mr. Apane, seems to have a very different view. It's saying fairly emphatically, isn't it, that nuclear power should come on stream firmly and irrevocably by 2025. Are you in disagreement then with the utility as far as the strategy is concerned?
No, what we're saying is that there is definitely a place for within the energy mix for all these technologies. And in fact, depending on the assumptions that we have made that we would like to test, there is a possibility that we could commission nuclear power plants in the next decade, in the earliest, or in around 2035, which would be a decade following that, at the latest.
What's the conventional wisdom? Which way is government?
There is a range of rates.
Well, what's the conventional wisdom, Mr. Apane? It would seem that you're now playing with the possibility of a decade-long timeline here. Surely you would need to make a firm decision sooner rather than later, given the serious energy constraints that the country is currently facing. If you push this out for another decade, for instance, the spectre of a shortage of power certainly looms large, doesn't it?
Correct, and that is why we believe that it would be prudent to err on the side of a well-prepared, sector. So, in other words, much as we believe that it might be within the next 10 years, it might be within the next 15, 20 years, that it would be prudent to make the necessary preparations, just in case we need to move faster than what we have experienced in the past.
I mean, the longer you push this out, surely, the more it's going to cost. Price estimates, for instance, ranging from $37 billion to $100 billion. If you push this out, it means the cost is going to escalate dramatically. It also means that conceivably the country cannot afford to wait any longer. That's true, isn't it?
Well, we're not driven by the cost of nuclear as the primary consideration in relation to the timing. There are a number of other issues that come into play as well. So, for example, nuclear is largely driven by the need to replace the retiring coal-fired power stations in the future. That is one of the most critical considerations. And at that point, you want to make sure that you have an environmentally better option for replacing those coal-fired power stations. And at this point, again, we're not sure precisely when this might happen. We have a sense that they will reach end of life, these power stations, within the next 10, 15 years, and that's what the nuclear, decision is largely premised on.
Why do you have such a different view from Eskom, which says emphatically that it could use the more than 150 billion rand it's going to accumulate in reserves within the next decade to build nuclear reactors? That's one assessment. You have a very different one. Surely it's not a good thing for you to be in conflict, which is what it appears to be, with the utility that will be responsible for the generation in the last instance.
No, I don't think we're in conflict with Eskom. If I understood Eskom, in fact, we had one of the group executives on our media briefing this morning. If I understood what Eskom's position was, is that much as this might well be, in the future, that they would want to go out and test the market in order to understand precisely what this would cost the country. And secondly, that if indeed we had to commission the nuclear power plants in the next decade, as I've indicated, that they would be well prepared for that. So there is no conflict in relation to the range of possibilities that relate to when the nuclear plant is going to be commissioned. I think we need to create the sense here that our energy mix does accommodate, various technologies, including nuclear. Now, the question has been, what is the pace and what is the scale in relation to this nuclear option? And basically what the operator Eskom is doing in our interpretation is that they're getting ready before coming to the final decision.
Ompia Pani in Cape Town, Deputy DDG at the Department of Energy, outlining the new proposals for South Africa's nuclear program. This is Newsnight.